Okay, we will go ahead and get started here today. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on Benovate Explores, our monthly conversation on health, risk, and insurance in an ever-evolving industry. My name is Catherine Rowe, and I'm the lead content specialist here at Benovate, and I'll be leading us through our conversation today on engagement. For those of you that are joining us for the first time today, in the past couple of months, we've really focused our conversations around data. In January, Jake Ely talked about the approach to gathering data. Dave Dune from the NJPA joined us in February to talk about not just receiving data, but also understanding what it means and how we drive forward to clear actions on meeting specific goals. Then in March, Matt Edwards from DrumCare joined us for a deep dive on specific types of data, specifically talking about diabetes care and management. Now we're going to start to shift gears into talking about engagement. This quarter, we're going to be talking about what it really takes to get people motivated to participate in programs and their health, both on an employee level and on a group level. As we go through our conversation today, we'll have plenty of time for some Q&A at the end. So if you do have questions pop up, then be sure to tweet them to @Benovate with hashtag Benovate Explores, and we'll get to those at the end of the conversation. So make sure to stick around to get those answered. Let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to introduce you today to our featured guest, Gary Ashley. He's the Executive Vice President of Allied National. Thank you for joining us today, Gary.
Thank you, Kat. I appreciate you inviting me, and I look forward to the conversation today.
Absolutely. If you wouldn't mind, can you give our viewers today just a short introduction on what Allied does and what your background is in the industry?
Sure. Allied National is a family-owned third-party administrator, and we've been providing small employer benefit plans, primarily health plans, for almost 50 years now. And when I say 50 years, we've been doing this since 1970, and I'm a little chagrined to say that I've been around for all of those years here. I think the picture you sent out for me was maybe a little bit dated. The hair is a little grayer now, but we've been focused on health insurance for so long and on small employers for so long that we have a real expertise in this marketplace that a lot of players don't have. But our perspective changed several years ago with the advent of the Affordable Care Act. We've really seen a major change in what our role is as an administrator. Most people think of TPAs, for those who are watching or familiar with the industry, a third-party administrator. Most people think of us as processors and pushers of paper and payer of claims. Well, that role is changing, particularly for us and the clients we serve. For us to be effective, we need to be more involved in risk management and health management than we ever have before. And we started this dive several years ago by talking about wellness for our customers. And wellness is kind of a fuzzy word that everybody interprets a little bit differently. For us, that actually turned into what we call population health management. That's a good industry buzzword for what we're trying to do for our customers now. And it's what brought us to UCAT and to Benovate several years ago.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Being in the industry for 50 years, I imagine you have a lot of perspective on what works, what doesn't work, and just how things have evolved and changed over time.
We've written the book on what doesn't work over 15 years. We're always looking for new things.
Sure. Well, hopefully we'll be able to talk a little bit about that later, but we'll start with talking about just how your perspective on the idea of motivation as it pertains to employees or employees groups and their health. Can you just tell us a little bit about the idea of motivation and what you do to kind of get people to that point?
Well, that's a big topic, and it's a tough topic too. It really depends upon who you're talking about, what their role in the healthcare conversation is. For us, we're dealing with small employers, and we're dealing with the employees, the insured employees of these small employers. And they really have different perspectives based upon their roles and what's important to them and what motivates them. For our employee and insured population, a lot of people might look at how people behave towards their own health and healthcare in general and say, well, they're just unmotivated. They're not willing to do anything. I kind of disagree with that because I've seen some recent instances that kind of disprove that. I don't think they're unmotivated. I think they're stuck and they're looking for some help and some motivation. So, you know, the healthcare system is huge. It's complicated. It's really daunting to the typical layperson who's covered under an employer health plan. You know, they've got these health benefits. They barely understand the benefits, let alone getting into the healthcare system and dealing with providers, with doctors and specialists and clinicians and all of these different people and what it means to them and where to go and where to turn. So when I say they're stuck, it's because they don't know what to do and they don't know where to turn. So I've got a couple of stories that have changed my perspective on their motivation that we've just been involved with recently, and Benovate helped us with this as well too. We reached out to a population of employees in our health plan. We picked 500 insulin-dependent diabetics out of our health plan and went out to survey them and look to see how we could help them and motivate them. And the results blew me away. And the results on the surface would say these people are unmotivated. We found that 20% of the people who are insulin-dependent diabetics were actually properly managing their blood sugar, their health, and what they were doing to take care of their condition. Meaning 80%, 4 out of every 5, were out of compliance with what they should have been doing. That sounds unmotivated. Well, what we found is we reached out to them and offered them testing services, free testing services, education, opportunities to work with someone to help monitor. People were welcoming us with open arms to jump into this conversation with them and help them manage this. You know, unfortunately, the healthcare system has become somewhat overloaded for primary care physicians in particular, and they're not able to spend the time they need with people to educate them and get them to the point that we're trying to do. So that's one of my examples. Another one that is kind of a sappy, self-serving one is we've also reached out to people through a vendor to help people with behavioral health issues. This is a really complicated issue in healthcare today because behavioral health encompasses all sorts of different issues for people. It's mental and nervous conditions. It's drug and alcohol abuse. It's simple stress and anxiety of daily life. And we've reached out to people who are in these situations, and the vendor, the psychologists we use to help these people navigate this rather difficult sector of the healthcare system have been effusive in their praise for what is happening and what resources we're bringing to bear for them. And one person in particular was dealing with a spouse with a drug abuse problem. And the spouse was coming out of rehab, and this person had no idea what to do next, how to deal with this. And we provided them the resources to start dealing with the problems. And this person's reaction was, I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know what to do. You've saved me here. And yeah, I got a little teary when I read some of the comments from this person, but it told me people are stuck. They need help and they're motivated to get that. They just don't know where to go to get that motivation. So that's the employee perspective of the whole motivation process to get involved in healthcare and health decisions and wellness. From the employer perspective, there's a real simple motivation here. The employers are the ones footing the bill. It's all about dollars for them. And basically there's two types of employers out there, the large and the small, and they've got a different perspective on how they attack this and how and how they turn their motivation into action. With a large employer, the typical large employer is self-funded. And for those who aren't familiar with the buzz terms of my industry, that means that the employer is not buying insurance. They're just funding the healthcare costs of their employees themselves. There may be some what's called stop loss insurance behind them, but we won't get into all that kind of detail. That's not what we're here to talk about. So that employer is highly motivated because they're paying the bills day in and day out for the healthcare costs of their insured employees and their dependents. They're motivated to control those. And the really aggressive employers are doing all sorts of really creative things. And one of the things I've seen recently is they're putting primary care physician clinics either inside their businesses if they're large enough to support that, or they're hiring primary care physicians to provide services to their employees on an outpatient urgent care type basis to make it easy for the employees to seek care. So the big employers know things they can do. They know how to go about it. They've got people hired within the company, HR and benefits specialists, who are tasked with doing this. That's all they do. So they have that motivation. But coming from my perspective, I've been dealing with small employers all my life in the benefits business. The small employers lack the sophistication that the big employers have. They don't have the resources to do the things the large employers do. They don't have the knowledge or the expertise to deal with this. You know, the typical small employer is a mom and pop shop with a handful of employees. They're buying benefits because they're good employers. They recognize the advantages to providing benefits to retain and attract employees in. But they sure as heck don't know what to do after they've paid that premium each month. You know, how can they be involved and how they can make a difference? So they don't really have skin in the game other than the premium payments. And that's really where Allied has gotten more involved. And in effect, we're behaving like the large employers' benefit specialists do by we're going out and we're trying to motivate the employees of these small employers, bypassing the employer themselves, but going direct to those employees and trying to help out. Well, a long answer to the topic of motivation, but I hope we open up some more dialogue around that.
I'm not sure if Catherine dropped off or not.
Yeah, I saw it just kind of hang up there, Michael. So maybe I drove her off.
I think she's back.
Okay. I lost internet connection for a second, but it looks like I'm still there in some aspects. I'm here twice.
I see you and hear you now, Kat.
I just trusted that you could roll with it, so just decided to leave you to it.
I did roll with it. So we got through a whole big discussion about what motivates anybody and how we're trying to impact them and jump into these smaller employers who don't have the resources or knowledge to really make a difference with health management for their employees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like it's not necessarily a matter of motivation for either the employee or the employer. It's really for the employees figuring out how do they get unstuck and move forward and use those resources. For the employers, especially the small ones, it's how do we find the resources or be creative in making sure people have the tools they need to move forward with engaging in their health.
Right, and you just used a good word there, Kat, and it kind of goes to what's the thing that makes a difference. It's engagement, and it's engagement from my perspective as a TPA, a health plan administrator. It's engagement from the actual insureds, the people consuming healthcare now, is getting them involved and engaged in some way to make a difference in the quality and the outcomes that they're experiencing in the healthcare system right now. And that's why we've partnered with Benovate to really drive that engagement forward, because your platform provides such a unique way to reach out and touch people, to use a phrase. You know, one of the problems we always faced with reaching out to our insured clients is a lot of times we didn't have good contact information for them. We didn't have a phone number. We didn't have an email address. You know, a lot of our clients are, you know, blue collar, mom and pop shop operation. A lot of them even don't have access to a computer. But one of the great things that's happened in the last 10 years with the advent of smartphones is it is amazing. Everybody has a smartphone now, and the Benovate platform does wonderfully in that perspective. So we now have a real great engagement tool and delivery mechanism for information and for content to reach our population, and it's making a huge difference.
Well, we're very happy to hear that. You know, one of our biggest goals is really to bring all of the resources into one place so that we can give members what they really need when they need it. So we've seen a lot of success with your groups and continue to keep driving that forward. So just out of curiosity, we talked a lot about how people are motivated. We just need to get them the tools and whatnot. Is there anything that you've seen that really unmotivates people or can hinder that engagement?
You know, part of that challenge that's kind of demotivating, unmotivating for people that we face, that Benovate faces, that we face in reaching out to these people, it's reaching through that clutter of communications, you know, the modern social media and constant email spam that people are barraged with. It's very unmotivating to people who can't separate out that noise. And it's a challenge for us to make sure that what we do is unique enough that it keeps them engaged. You know, people are lose their motivation when they don't have any help around them on a topic that is so complicated like healthcare. So it's incumbent upon us to meet that engagement challenge and go beyond what people normally see, and be unique enough and creative enough that we can get through that communication clutter that everybody faces. I know my day-to-day is a nightmare of emails and great ideas coming through spam that I've got to separate out good from bad and what's important to me and what's not. And that right there demotivates me just a little bit, trying to fight through all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally understand. It can be a challenge some days. So it sounds like there's kind of a conflict over time. We've gotten more technology that can help with engaging people, but at the same time, that can present a problem in creating too much clutter because there's emails and text messages and notifications and all of that. Is that accurate? How do we find that balance? That might be a hard question. I don't know anybody has that answer.
I'm not sure I'm an expert on that subject to really opine on it, but you know, I made the point a moment ago that the advent of smartphones has maybe it's increased the clutter, but it's also increased the opportunity to reach out and communicate proactively with someone. I know from our own perspective, we've had to make sure our website and our delivery tools are mobile compatible. And when I look at the statistics of how people connect with us over the internet, you know, mobile platforms are becoming more and more prevalent. It's not just somebody sitting down in Windows and Internet Explorer and hitting your website. I mean, they're on iOS, they're on Android, which means they're coming from some sort of mobile device, a phone or a tablet, and you better be ready to handle that. And the Benovate platform really serves well in that.
Has your perspective on the kind of piggybacking off of the technology advances, has your perspective on how to engage people changed over time? You know, since 50 years ago, engaging people in one way to now, how has that evolved?
Well, I think my absolute perspective on the need to engage has definitely changed over time. You know, back in the the old days, our engagement with our insured members was minimal. I mean, if they called us, we responded and give great customer service. We processed and paid their benefits, and that was the extent of it. And now we've realized that with costs continuing to explode in healthcare and the motivations that employers and the employees have, that we've got to do so much more to that. So, my perspective really has been, I'm not just a benefits administrator anymore. I'm involved in managing and helping people's healthcare decisions. Can I help them make an appointment with a different provider? Can I help them go get a second opinion? Can I provide them diabetic testing or mental health counseling and things like that? So it's been an eye opener to me that really has happened in the past 5 to 8 years since the passage of the Affordable Care Act, as costs have really skyrocketed, that we've got to do so much more. And we can't just sit back and let people stay stuck. I keep coming back to that. People are just stuck and they're needing help. So that's where my perspective has changed over the last few years.
Sure. Well, and that brings up a unique challenge that we see amongst our coordinators that we work with on a regular basis, is just they spend so much time developing these great programs or finding great resources. Mm-hmm. But the challenge is, how do we get it out there and make sure people know about it? One thing that we do is provide client kits, and this is a way to just pull everything together. Here are your posters, here are some email templates. If you want a PowerPoint for a presentation, it's all there, done, ready to go. And what we're trying to do is help our coordinators or people like you who have these great programs and you want to spend time making sure those programs are executed really well. Now we can just help give you the tools you need to make sure people actually know about it. Because as the theme keeps coming up, if people don't know about the programs or aren't sure where to start or stuck, then it's hard to keep moving forward in that motivation.
Absolutely, Kat, and that's been a big challenge for us as we've rolled out the Benovate portal and the branding we have around it and all the other tools we put into it with your guys' help. Is, okay, we've got this great tool. How do we get people engaged in using that tool in the first place? The tool is fantastic. Once we get them in there, we got them hooked. They love it and they stay engaged. So we've done simple things ourselves when we send out, typically when you get your insurance identification card from your health plan, you kind of look at it. Yeah, it spelled my name right, and you put it in your pocket. Well, we attach this to a big flyer, and we've tried to keep it colorful and simple and engaging. And we tell them, you've got 5 things you need to do right now, and here they are. And the last one is as simple as put this card in your wallet or purse. So we're not giving them complicated things to do. We're trying to educate them right then and there how to start engage with their health plan. And we've had really good response to this, that people go, oh, okay, I need to find this out. I need to look at this. And I need to register for this member connection portal through Benovate, because that looks kind of cool and I can earn rewards. And so right there, we start capturing attention. We've had really good uptake, I think, because of that.
Excellent. Well, we're getting to the end of our discussion here today, so I want to make sure to leave time for some Q&A. So if you have any questions, we invite everybody to take yourselves off mute and join in the conversation. So feel free to just shout it out, or if you aren't comfortable doing that, then go ahead and tweet to @Benovate at #Benovate Explores. That's a mouthful. So does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask for Gary?
Well, this is Michael. The one question I'd have for Gary is, as we look over the next 2 to 3 years, and we're trying to take all the different clinical programs that are out there that are going to really kind of drive people with the risks that are identified in your populations, what do you see as not only the motivation, but the programs themselves and integrating them, but what do you see as the most critical thing to bring it all together to make sure we can deliver those people in a timely way, in a relevant way, to get them to sustain themselves in those programs to have the most meaningful effect to risk?
Wow, that's a tough question, Michael. Really, I think it falls on us as the health plan administrator to have a very good grasp of everything we're trying to accomplish and a good management plan in place to drive this issue. My clients are the small employers and their employees. They're lost. That's why they're stuck, is they're lost. So we have to give them a roadmap. We have to intervene when intervention makes sense and can improve someone's health outcomes or save them money, those kinds of things. We need to intervene when we have a diabetic who's not managing their health care. We need to intervene when there's a mental health crisis and families are in crisis and they're not thinking straight and they're emotional. Somebody cool and level-headed needs to come in and help with the process. So through all these ways health plans can intervene, I honestly don't see the big players, the Blue Crosses of the world, getting down to this granular level and trying to help people on an individual level. So bringing this all together really falls upon a health plan manager like Allied. It falls upon a system like Benovate's that gives tools and engagement processes and motivation to people to stay engaged with their healthcare. It's a long, hard battle, as we both know from fighting this over the last few years. But I really think it, for the most part, particularly this small employer population, it falls on us to manage it and make it work.
Yeah, agreed. I thank you. I think what's interesting is that intervention has to also come from a trustworthy source, right?
No,
and I think that's one of the beauties, I think, of what you guys do and in your space, is that people don't necessarily just look at you as an insurance company, but they look at you as an overall entity that they can trust, and that by you bringing the different types of programs to them, that they're more likely to see them as relevant, see them as helpful, rather than, oh, it's just all about saving money for my employer or for the insurance company. It's really about helping them get a better outcome and ultimately save them time and money and effort to be able to do that. And I think that's a unique part when you look at the overall ecosystem that an organization like yours is able to make in speed and change to where things go, because these are constantly, I know we've talked about this for years, how quickly this industry changes. And in some ways, how some of it never changes. And it's kind of riding the right wave to the member to be able to make that happen.
Well, you used a good word there, Michael, and the word is trust. And I'll be the first to admit that historically, consumers don't trust insurance companies. They always think they're out to rip them off and deny them claims and benefits and things like this. And it's a challenge in our industry to be proactively going out there to try and influence people and make sure that what we're doing is trustworthy and valuable to them, and that they see that. And I think we're having that impact. I truly do. But we're fighting a historical bias that's existed for some time about insurers and benefit providers.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. That is all we have time for today. So I think that's a good place to kind of wrap it up. I want to thank you again, Gary, for joining us today, and to everyone who's on our webinar. Join us next month on May 16th at 11:30 a.m. for our next episode in the series, where we will continue our conversation on engagement. And as always, if you have any feedback or additional questions, then please shoot them our way. Thank you to everyone, and we will see you soon.
Thank you for having me.